Hello there, it's Michael Gray. This is March 2020, back with another bank pool video. The topic of this bank pool video is going to be long rail cross corner banks. But prior to getting into that, I'd just like to make mention of some of my other videos that have gotten good reviews, which are the center to edge and credit card aiming video on YouTube, as well as the long rail spot shot straight back video, and then the cross side basics video, and the upcoming long rail cross corner from up table with the tighter angle. But into this video, basically we're going to be talking about the cross corner, especially how to make adjustments up the table on different angles. And let's go ahead and get into that topic right now. So basically, cross corner is banking a ball to the long rail on one side, across the table, back to the opposite corner pocket. So what we're going to try and figure out in this video is some of the concepts of how to make the adjustments for the ball, because one terminology would be like a Christmas tree angle, where you would imagine if you went into the rail with the ball in one direction, that it would have an equal and opposite reaction once it hits the rail to go in the other thing, so that you into the pocket, so that you can try and figure out, well, obviously angle in, angle out. But that's not the case with pool, because the ball going into the rail compresses into the rail, so it adjusts the angle. So it actually tightens the angle. So what you have to do is kind of make an adjustment on the other side of that to compensate for that. And there are many different concepts or theories or I guess hypotheses on how to accomplish this goal of finding the correct angle. And basically the system that I use is that I use the diamonds that are on the rail, but I don't aim at those diamonds on the rail. I aim at the adjacent point on the gutter line, which is the line that's on the inside surface of the playing of the table, of the playing surface. That is 1 1/8 inch on the inside of the rail. It's 1 1/8 inches because the ball is 2 1/4 inches. And basically the base of all balls don't cross that line, except for maybe a little tiny bit, which is why that line that goes all the way around the inside of the table is about the width, the diameter of a pencil eraser. Almost as if you were to take a pencil and just kind of rub 1 1/8 inches all the way around the table, and there's this light line around the table, unless, of course, it's brand new cloth. So the adjustment that I found is that each of the balls, as seen here, or this is 1 diamond, 2 diamonds, 3 diamonds, and actually 3 1/2. You can't use 4 because you'd be aiming into the middle of the pocket. So what I have is a ball that is adjacent to that spot on the diamond, which is on the gutter line, which is on that worn line all the way around the inside of the table. So what I do is I put a dot on the rail, and so that you can see it from above the table or with the video camera. And then there's also a dot on the table, which is basically at the spot on the table where that represents that point on the table. So point 1, 2, 3, and 3.5. And then here what you have is spots on the other side of the table and the correction for that. So here you have the first diamond, the second diamond, and it's actually 0.2 for every diamond or 2 diamonds up, right? So this, if you're shooting at the number 1 diamond on the 4 rail, then you would think that it would be 2, but it's actually 2.2. If you're shooting at the second diamond, you would think that it's 4, but it's actually 4.4. If you're shooting at the third diamond, you would think that it's 6, but it's actually 6.6. And then 3.5, you would think that it's 7, but it's actually 7.7. And we'll talk more about that in a couple minutes. And of course the side pocket, this is the equivalent to 4, and that little spot right there is 4.4. So on each one of these particular shots. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to basically just, this is like a trial and error. This is like a mathematical proof that the theory is correct, and basically I'm going to shoot in this direction and see that it's actually correct. So we can see here, this is 2.2. On the other side, I'm going to be shooting at 1. So you see the tip of my cue is where the ghost ball or the base of the ball is at that number 1 diamond on the gutter line. And then 2.2 is where the base of the ball would be, because the playing surface is the playing surface. It doesn't extend to the rails. So this is where a lot of people make errors, is they're using the diamonds on the rails. Well, what happens if your rail is 8 inches wide? What happens if your rail is like one of those old tables where it's only 2 or 3 inches wide? So then the diamond's going to be in different locations, and then you're always going to, it's going to make adjustments. This makes it to where it's the same on every table. So this is number 2. So the base of the cue ball, or the base of where the ball would, the depth of the rail. This is number 3. Which that is the correction, right? So that was 3 and 6. Now this is what it actually looks like for the correction, right? So it doesn't sound like much, but it's you can tell that it's a big adjustment. Look at the difference between the number 1 and the number 2 and number 3, and then we're about to come to number 4, which is 3.5. You'd think that it would have to be the 7, which would be angle in, angle out, but it's actually 7.7, which is visually and actually quite an adjustment to have to make. So basically, if you could just memorize these 4, then you can kind of guesstimate, where the ball is going to be any place on the table in this area, and be able to figure out with not 100% accuracy, unless it's directly on that, but you'll be able to get a better feel of the line, of the correct line. Of course, if you're playing one pocket, this is super important, because it's gonna ensure that you're gonna get the ball correct more times than not. And when you're playing bank pool, you're just going to have to hit thousands of balls, but you have to have some place to start. This is a starting point. Okay, so now what we've got right here is, this is the first diamond on the long rail, which is going to be 2.2 up table. So we're using some of the same concepts that we talked about on the short rail basics bank pool video, and we're trying to just make this as simple as possible. So I don't want to have any I don't want the cue ball south of the line, so that I'm maybe putting accidental friction-induced tightening line on it, right? So here, basically, I'm just kind of putting the cue ball on that 2.2 with a little bit of draw on the cue ball, so I have decreased friction between the cue ball and the object ball, and the object ball takes off at the correct angle, at the correct line, quicker and cleaner, without the balls having friction-induced or collision-induced throw. And we can see here, I wasn't exactly on the line with the cue ball, but I was directionally on that line with the 2.2 to the number 1 diamond. So now what we've got here next should be aiming at the number 2 coordinate on the gutter line, and 4.4 up table. And this is hitting at a rate of about 70. Of course, if you're firing this ball at a speed of 90, or if you're coming across it one direction or the other, then you're going to have to make the physics adjustments of the ball compressing deeper into the rail and tightening up more or widening more, depending on the angle that you come across the ball. But basically what we're trying to do here is just the simplest of shots, the simplest of strokes, with the least amount of variables, just to show that these are the correct number adjustments, angle adjustments. So on each of these shots, I shoot them 5 times. And the it's okay if the cue ball is coming across like that, that's fine. The important thing was that the face of the cue ball was spinning backwards in order to allow the object ball to take a truer path sooner. And I tried to put the little dots on the top of the rail to hopefully make it to where it's visible in the video as well. And where you really start to see how much of an adjustment you have to make is on when it gets up to shooting at that third diamond or shooting at the 3.5 up table. The adjustment is much more noticeable. So here we're at 3 and 6.6 on the gutter line. And I just moved the ball out of the way in order to show the stick, so that's not the exact angle where those two balls were lined up, but this is. So this is shooting at, so the base of this strike ball right there hit at number 3 on the rail, and the angle is 6.6 up table. So let's just say if the object ball was in between this 2 ball and this 3 ball, then what would you do? Well, the first thing that you could do is, it doesn't matter where it's at on the table in there. It could be closer to where my hand is, or it could be closer to where the long rail is. It doesn't matter. But you can use the line from the 2 to 2.2 and the 3 to 6.6 and kind of gauge like somewhere in the middle there, depending on which one it's closer to, which one you want to use. And kind of adjust from there. And then once you get more advanced, of course, you can use speed or a little bit of inside English or outside English on the cue ball if you want. I wouldn't suggest using too much of either of those. I would try and stay on the quasi center axis with the shaft. So if you're shooting inside English, you want the one side of your shaft still on the center axis, or vice versa if you're shooting outside English. So if you do that, then that's also kind of limiting your variables. So you might not have quite as many options of somebody that has a real good feel of throwing the ball in, but they're going to have much more variables and be less consistent with that style of bank pool. So here what we're trying to do is decrease variables. And we're also trying to give ourselves the best chance to at least have whatever the baseline knowledge is going to be to make these shots on a regular basis. When you watch bank pool, the players that feel comfortable with these types of angles are high-level players. For instance, if you're playing somebody and it's the first time that you're playing them and you see that they make 2 out of 3 of these shots and the number that you would make is maybe 1 out of 10, then you can pretty much be assured that it doesn't matter how good you shoot the other shots, you're probably not going to be able to beat them, because the skill that it takes to make these on a regular basis pretty much dictates that you have a high level of understanding and that you put a bunch of dedication and work into this specific game of bank pool. This is actually quite difficult. And on that last shot, I just aimed poorly. I hit it probably at like 3.8, which is why it hit above the corner pocket down there. And it wasn't a stroke issue. It was just an aiming issue. And of course, I'm shooting these quite quickly, actually. I would never shoot this fast if I was actually in a game. But since I've already kind of had it lined up and I know all I have to do is make a good simple stroke on the cue ball, that I'm going to be relatively successful on these attempts. And finally, just another couple of examples here of maybe how I used to bank or how some other people bank. But one thing that you'll see consistent here is that the spot that's usually in the graphic is always that spot on the gutter line. If you see any graphics or anything that's actually pointing at the diamond, you could pretty much assume that it's probably not a very good pool. Anyway, here is an example of, the shooting at the invisible table on the other side. And it's basically gutter lined to the invisible gutter line, as though there was actually no rail in the center of the table there. This is another similar example of it. If you were to put a mirror splitting the pockets, you can see you're not looking at the rail. You're basically on that gutter line where the base of the ball never touches and goes past onto the mirror image from there. And then here, this is a angle in, angle out. So number 1 is number 2, and then the number 2 corresponds with number 4. Number 3 corresponds with 6. This is incorrect. This is totally wrong. There's no adjustment made here, which means you'll never make the ball. And then the best one that I found is this Eckert, which is 1/3 more than twice the system, but it's still an incorrect mathematical model, but it's a little better than nothing. You just have to make slightly incremental more adjustments as you go up the table, which is the 0.2, then the 0.4, then the 0.6, 0.7, blah, blah, blah. And this is another example. I'm not sure of the system here, or maybe the Eckert and 1/3 more than twice, or actually 2 different models. But what you can see here is that that 1/3 more than twice. On here, the colored adjustments or the correct adjustments, right? So you could see the one that corresponds with 1 and number 2 actually goes to about 2.2, and the one that corresponds with 2 and goes to 4 actually goes to about 4.4. So you can see that the adjustments are actually pretty close to mine. The 3 actually looks like it only goes to about 6.5, so that adjustment is a little less. But as you go up the table, you're going to have to make more of an adjustment. And actually the notation on this is the fast speed bank. So like that angle 3 going to maybe 6.4 right there is going to be nowhere close. It's going to be, 3 is going to have to go to 6.6 or maybe even higher if you're going to go at a faster rate of, faster pace velocity. So there you go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this video now. I guess that's it. The next video to come will be what happens if the ball is way up table, so that it's even higher up on that cross corner than these general areas. All right, thanks a lot. Isosceles triangle to come.